My straight friend ended up revealing himself while we watched a movie at home. It started like any other weekend, just two friends, a couch, and a movie playing in the background. But somewhere between the laughter and the silence, something shifted. His eyes lingered a little too long, his hand brushed mine and didn't move away, and the air grew heavier with everything unspoken. I thought I knew him. I thought he was untouchable, forever behind a wall of certainty that I could never cross. But that night, in the dim glow of the screen, he revealed something that would change the way I saw him, and myself, forever. What unfolded wasn't just about friendship or attraction. It was about fear, desire, and the moment when pretending is no longer possible. And if you've ever wondered what happens when a line you swore you'd never cross suddenly disappears, stay with me. Subscribe now, hit like, and turn on notifications, because this story will take you right into the heart of a night I'll never forget. Friday nights at my apartment had become a ritual. Pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table, 2 cans of soda sweating in the glow of the TV, and my best friend, Ryan, stretched out on the couch beside me. We'd been doing this since high school. Back then, it was superhero marathons and late-night jokes. Now, in our 20s, it hadn't changed much. At least, not on the surface. Ryan was the kind of guy people noticed without him trying. Tall, athletic build, sandy blonde hair that always fell just right, and that easy smile that could disarm anyone. Girls had always circled him like moths to a flame. And me? I'd been the one in the background, the friend, the safe presence. The one who pretended not to care when Ryan leaned into stories about his dates, or when he teased me for never bringing anyone around. The truth was, I'd cared more than I should have. For years, I carried feelings I never dared to name. I convinced myself they were harmless, just admiration or friendship turned intense. But sometimes, when his shoulder brushed mine or when he laughed at one of my dumb jokes, the truth pressed harder against my ribs. That night, we picked a random movie, something neither of us was really interested in, more background noise than anything else. Ryan lounged back, his long legs stretched out, his socked feet propped on the table. He grabbed a slice of pizza, grease already shining on his fingers. "Man, this plot makes no sense," he said between bites. "Yeah, but you picked it," I shot back, smirking. He grinned, that boyish grin that always made my chest ache. "Guess I owe you one for sitting through it." We laughed, but as the movie dragged on, the laughter faded into quiet. The room felt smaller somehow, the space between us charged in a way I couldn't explain. I tried to focus on the screen, but my eyes kept drifting to him, to the way his jaw tightened when he chewed, the curve of his arm as it rested casually across the back of the couch, close enough that if I leaned just an inch, I'd feel his hand brush against my shoulder. I shifted, trying to bury the thought, when suddenly Ryan spoke. "Hey," he said, his voice lower, softer than usual. "Yeah." He hesitated, his eyes still fixed on the TV. "You ever keep something to yourself for so long it feels like it's eating you alive?" The question startled me. I blinked, my throat dry. "Yeah. I mean, who doesn't?" Ryan nodded slowly, as if turning my answer over in his mind. His hand tapped against his knee, restless. "It's just, sometimes I feel like people see me one way, but it's not the whole picture, you know?" I stared at him, my heart picking up speed. Was this about me? About us? Or was I just twisting his words into something I wanted to hear? "Ryan," I said carefully, "what are you trying to say?" He finally turned his head, and our eyes met. There was something in his expression I'd never seen before, a flicker of vulnerability, stripped of his usual confidence. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the muffled dialogue from the movie, forgotten in the background. Then, as if the air itself pushed him forward, his hand brushed against mine on the couch cushion. At first it was just a graze, light enough to pass as an accident. But he didn't move it away. My breath caught. Every muscle in my body tensed, torn between pulling back and leaning in. His hand stayed there, warm, deliberate. "Ryan," my voice came out hoarse, my throat suddenly tight. He looked down at our hands, then back at me. "I've been hiding something," he said quietly. "From everyone. From you most of all." The world seemed to tilt. My mind raced through every possibility, every hope I had buried deep. My chest pounded so hard it hurt. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his jaw working as if the words were too heavy to push out. His fingers twitched against mine, a silent confession in themselves. The moment stretched, fragile, teetering on the edge of something I couldn't name. My whole life felt balanced on that second, on whether he would pull away or keep going. Finally, he leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "I'm not who you think I am." Before I could respond, the power flickered. The TV went dark, the hum of electricity vanishing into silence. The room plunged into dimness, lit only by the faint glow from the streetlight outside. The sudden darkness magnified everything. The closeness, the heat, the tension that pressed against us like a living thing. Ryan's face was inches from mine now, his breath warm against my cheek. The vulnerability in his eyes hadn't disappeared. It had deepened, pulling me into a place I'd never been brave enough to go before. I wanted to ask him what he meant, to make him say the words. But I couldn't. My own fear clamped my mouth shut. Then, in the quiet, he whispered, almost trembling, "I can't keep pretending anymore." And just as his fingers tightened over mine, the sound of keys rattling at my front door made us both jerk back. Someone was coming in. The metallic jingle of keys against the lock sliced through the thick silence like a blade. Ryan's hand snapped back from mine so fast it almost hurt, his body jerking upright on the couch. My heart, already pounding, now thrashed against my ribs in a panic that had nothing to do with the movie and everything to do with the secret that had just nearly spilled into the open. The door swung wide, and in came my roommate, Alex, shrugging off his jacket. He froze mid-step, his eyes darting between us on the couch. "Whoa," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Didn't realize I was interrupting movie night part 2. His tone was casual, teasing, but I could feel the blood drain from Ryan's face. He muttered something under his breath and reached for a slice of pizza, trying to act normal. I forced a laugh, though it came out too high, too quick. "Yeah," I said, "just a bad movie and too much food. That's all." Alex eyed us for a second longer, suspicion flickering across his face, but then he shrugged, grabbed a drink from the fridge, and disappeared into his room, leaving the door ajar. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Ryan kept his eyes on the pizza in his hands, though he didn't take a bite. My palms were sweating, my heart refusing to calm down. Finally, I broke the silence. That was close. Ryan's jaw tightened, and he set the pizza back on the box with a thud. Too close. I studied him. The way his shoulders hunched, the stiffness in his movements, it was all defense, a shell snapping back into place after it had cracked open for a second. I hated it. Hated that a few seconds of interruption had slammed the door shut on something so raw, so important. "Ryan," I said carefully, "what were you about to tell me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he rubbed his palms against his jeans, staring at the dark TV screen as though searching for an escape. "You can't just drop something like that and then shut down," I pressed. "You said you can't keep pretending." "Pretending what?" His chest rose and fell, his breathing shallow. Then, finally, he turned to me. His eyes were shining, though whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. "You don't get it," he said, his voice low, almost harsh. "If I say it out loud, everything changes. You'll look at me different. Everyone will." I leaned forward, the desperation in his voice cutting through me. "Ryan, I could never look at you different. Not after everything we've been through." He searched my face, like he was weighing the truth of my words. The seconds stretched on, unbearable. "I'm not who they think I am," he said finally, his voice breaking. "I've been lying to everyone, my family, my friends, even myself. And I can't keep doing it." The words sank into me like stones into water, rippling through every hidden hope I'd buried. I opened my mouth, but he wasn't finished. "I like girls," he said, almost as if rehearsing, then shook his head. "No. That's what I've always told myself. That's what I've told everyone." "But," he trailed off, his hands trembling slightly. "But what?" I asked, my voice soft, barely a whisper. His eyes locked on mine, and the raw honesty there made my chest tighten. But I've been lying. Because the only person I can't stop thinking about is sitting right next to me. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My throat closed up, my thoughts scattering. I had imagined hearing those words 1,000 times in my head, in 1,000 different scenarios. But none of them compared to the way it felt now, real, unpolished, broken and vulnerable. Ryan, his name caught in my throat, heavy with all the emotions I'd held back for years. But before I could say more, Alex's door creaked open. His footsteps padded down the hall toward the kitchen. Ryan's eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. "Not here," he whispered fiercely. "Not now." I wanted to argue, to grab his hand again and refuse to let him slip back into silence. But the fear in his eyes stopped me cold. Alex reappeared with his phone charger, barely glancing at us before retreating back into his room. The moment stretched, fragile and tense, until the door clicked shut again. Ryan stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "I should go." "What?" "No," I said, rising to my feet. "You can't just drop that on me and leave." "I have to," he insisted, his voice sharp, his back already turned toward the door. "If I stay, I'll say more, and I'm not ready for that. Not yet." I took a step toward him, my chest aching. "Then when will you be ready?" He paused at the door, his hand gripping the knob so tightly his knuckles whitened. Slowly, he turned back, his expression torn, his eyes heavy with something deeper than fear. "When I'm not so damn scared," he said quietly. And with that, he opened the door and stepped into the night, leaving me standing there with a heart that felt split wide open. I sank back onto the couch, the flicker of the streetlight outside casting long shadows across the room. The pizza was cold, the movie forgotten, but the echo of his confession reverberated through me, louder than anything I'd ever heard. He had said it. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough to shake the walls I thought would never crack. Enough to make me realize that maybe, just maybe, the feelings I had buried weren't mine alone. But as I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, one question burned in my mind, refusing to fade. Would he come back? The door clicked shut behind Ryan, and the silence it left behind was louder than any slammed door could have been. I sat frozen on the couch, staring at the space he'd just vacated, the faint echo of his words still burning in my ears. "The only person I can't stop thinking about is sitting right next to me." I wanted to believe it. God, I did. But the way he bolted, the panic in his eyes, left me torn between hope and doubt. Was it real, or was it just a slip of his tongue? A confession he'd regret as soon as the night swallowed him up? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed it, the warmth of his hand brushing mine, the vulnerability in his voice, the way he said he couldn't keep pretending. By sunrise, my chest ached from holding it all in. The next morning, I tried texting him. "Are you okay?" My thumb hovered over the send button before I forced it through. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then nothing. Hours passed. Still nothing. By evening, I was pacing the apartment, my nerves fraying. Alex eyed me from the kitchen. "You good, man? You've been pacing like a caged animal." "I'm fine," I lied too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "If you say so. Look, if it's about Ryan, I'd chill. That guy's been weird lately." My head snapped up. "Weird how?" Alex shrugged, sipping his drink. "Just distracted. On edge. Like he's hiding something. Guess you'd know more than me." I looked away, my throat dry. He had no idea how right he was. Later that night, when the apartment had finally gone quiet, I stepped outside for some air. The city hummed in the distance, the streetlights casting long, lonely shadows. That's when I saw him, Ryan, leaning against his car parked across the street. He looked up, our eyes locking. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he pushed off the car and walked toward me, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing against a storm. "I shouldn't be here," he said when he stopped a few feet away. "Then why are you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. His eyes softened. "Because I can't stay away." The air between us felt electric again, alive with everything unsaid. My heart raced, but I forced myself to hold steady. "You scared me last night, Ryan." You said all that, and then you left. I know, he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. I panicked. I've never said anything like that to anyone. Ever. I studied him, the raw honesty in his eyes, the way his usual confidence had crumbled into something fragile. Did you mean it? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Every word. My breath hitched, the weight of it sinking in. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a drunken slip or a fleeting thought. It was real. Then why are you so afraid? I pressed. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment he looked younger, smaller. Because I've spent my whole life being who everyone expects me to be. The straight guy. The easy smile, the girlfriends, the guy no one questions. If I admit the truth, I don't know what's left. I don't know who I am without that. His words pierced me because I understood. I had lived my own version of that silence, that hiding. But hearing it from him, Ryan, the guy who had always seemed untouchable, made my chest ache in a way I hadn't expected. I stepped closer, the distance between us shrinking to almost nothing. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You just have to be honest, with yourself, with me. His eyes flickered down to my lips, then back up. The air buzzed with possibility, with the weight of what might happen if either of us moved just a fraction closer. Then a voice rang out from a passing car. Yo, Ryan. That you? We both froze, snapping our heads toward the street. A truck rolled by, two guys hanging out the window, waving. Ryan lifted a hand in quick acknowledgement, his jaw tight. Only after the truck disappeared did he let out a shaky breath. That's what I mean, he muttered. This town watches everything. One wrong move and everyone knows. I clenched my fists at my sides, frustrated. So what, we just keep pretending nothing's happening? Pretend last night didn't happen? Pretend this isn't real? Ryan's face twisted, torn between fear and longing. I don't want to pretend anymore. But I don't know how not to. Silence stretched, thick with tension. Finally, I took a chance. I reached out and took his hand, just for a second, squeezing it before letting go. His eyes widened, his breath catching. This is real, I said softly. No matter how much you try to bury it. He looked at me like he was memorizing my face, like he needed to hold on to this moment in case it slipped away. I want this, he whispered. But I'm scared of what comes next. Then let's figure it out together, I said, my heart pounding. For the first time, a small, genuine smile tugged at his lips. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off him, close enough that I thought, finally, he might kiss me. But just as the moment tilted towards something undeniable, his phone buzzed loudly in his pocket. He flinched, pulling it out. His expression darkened as he read the screen. It's my dad, he muttered. He wants me home. Now. My stomach dropped. Is everything okay? He shoved the phone back into his pocket, his jaw tight. No. He knows something's up. Before I could ask more, he turned toward his car, urgency in every step. I'll call you, he said over his shoulder. And then he was gone again, swallowed by the night, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with my heart in my throat. I didn't hear from Ryan for 2 days. 2 endless, suffocating days where I replayed every word he'd said on that sidewalk, every flicker of fear in his eyes when he mentioned his dad. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, silent, as if mocking me. On the 3rd night, just as I was about to give in to sleep, my phone finally buzzed. His name lit up the screen. Can we talk? Come over. I didn't even hesitate. 15 minutes later, I was pulling into his driveway, the lights of his family's house glowing against the dark sky. My stomach twisted with nerves. I'd been here countless times before, but this time felt different. Ryan met me at the side gate, away from the front porch where his father usually sat. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. What's going on? I asked. He glanced toward the house, then back at me. My dad's been watching me, asking questions. He knows something's off. The weight of his words pressed against my chest. And he thinks it's because of me? Ryan didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, he saw us. That night. Not everything, but enough. He knows I was with you. Fear coiled in my stomach. Ryan's father, Mr. Cole, wasn't the kind of man who tolerated weakness or anything that didn't fit his narrow idea of normal. I'd grown up around him too, seen the way he barked orders at Ryan, the way his approval was always something to be earned, never freely given. What did he say? I asked, my throat dry. Ryan's eyes darkened. He asked if I was hiding something, if I was ashamed of something. He looked me straight in the eye and told me, men in this family don't break tradition. The venom in his father's words burned through me. I wanted to say something to comfort him, but Ryan's shoulders slumped and his vulnerability pulled me in like a tide. I can't keep living like this, he said, his voice breaking. Pretending every day. Smiling when people expect me to. Going on dates I don't want. Lying to everyone, including you. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You don't have to lie anymore. Not to me. Not to yourself. His eyes flicked to mine, filled with pain and longing. But if I stop lying, I lose everything else. My family, my place here, maybe even this farm. You won't lose me, I said firmly. For a second, the words seemed to steady him. He reached for my hand, his fingers trembling against mine. You don't know how much I need to hear that. The quiet between us was thick with emotion, and for the first time since that night on my couch, I felt him lean into it instead of pulling away. He squeezed my hand harder, like he was holding onto the last piece of solid ground in a world that was crumbling beneath him. But then, the sound of a door slamming shattered the moment. We both turned. Mr. Cole stood on the porch, his shadow stretching across the yard. Ryan, he barked, his voice cutting through the night. Inside. Now. Ryan froze. His grip on my hand slackened, his chest rising and falling fast. I felt him start to pull away, but I held on tighter. You don't have to go, I whispered urgently. He looked at me, torn apart inside. Then he shook his head. You don't understand. If I don't, it only gets worse. And with that, he let go and walked toward his father. I stood there, helpless, watching the man I loved shrink under the weight of someone else's expectations. From where I stood, I could hear the muffled exchange, his father's sharp tone, Ryan's strained replies. Words like disgrace and family name carried across the yard, cutting through the night like knives. Then came the worst of it. Is it true? Mr. Cole's voice thundered. Are you like that? I couldn't hear Ryan's reply, but I saw the way his shoulders sagged, the way his father's face twisted with rage. Not under my roof, Mr. Cole spat. Not in my house. You either fix this, or you're done here. The screen door slammed shut, leaving Ryan outside, his chest heaving, his hands trembling. He turned, his eyes finding me in the shadows. They were wet, shining under the porch light, filled with devastation. I told you, he said, his voice raw. If I admit the truth, I lose everything. I closed the distance between us, wanting to wrap him in my arms, to shield him from the cruelty of his own blood. But when I reached for him, he stepped back. You should go, he whispered, before he sees us together again. The ache in my chest was unbearable. I'm not leaving you like this. His voice cracked. Please. Just go. For a long, painful moment, I stood frozen, torn between staying and obeying. But the look in his eyes, pleading, broken, left me no choice. Slowly I stepped back, my heart splintering with every movement. Ryan, I started, but the words died in my throat. He shook his head, his lips pressed tight. Don't make this harder. And then, as I walked away, I heard it, the sound of him breaking. A choked sob, muffled by the night, but clear enough to etch itself into me forever. I wanted to turn back, to run to him, to fight his father myself. But instead, I kept walking, my fists clenched, my chest hollow, because I knew Ryan had to make the choice himself. As I reached my car, I looked back one last time. He was still standing there, staring at the ground, his figure small against the towering shadow of the house behind him. And for the first time, I realized, love wasn't always enough to save someone from the weight of the world pressing down on them. I didn't see Ryan for a week. A whole week of unanswered texts, of empty nights where the silence screamed louder than any movie or memory could. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest leapt with hope, only to crash again when it wasn't him. On the 8th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove back to his farm. The air was heavy, gray clouds pressing low over the fields. His truck was parked outside, but the house looked quiet, shuttered. My heart pounded as I walked up to the porch, each step heavier than the last. The door opened before I knocked. Ryan stood there. His face was pale, his eyes ringed with exhaustion, like sleep hadn't touched him in days. He looked older somehow, worn down, as if carrying a burden too big for his shoulders. "Ethan," he said softly. My name sounded fragile on his lips. I wanted to pull him into me, to hold him until the weight fell away. Instead, I just asked, "Can we talk?" He nodded, stepping aside to let me in. The house was eerily quiet. No TV, no music, just the hum of the old fridge in the kitchen. We sat at the table. The distance between us felt like miles. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Ryan, I can't keep wondering. Do you still want this, want us?" His hands clenched together on the table. He didn't look at me when he answered. "I want it more than anything." "Then why?" My voice broke. "Why are you pushing me away?" At last, his eyes met mine. They were full of sorrow, shimmering with tears he refused to let fall. "Because wanting you means losing everything else. My dad made it clear. If I choose you, I lose this house, this farm, my family. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to survive that." The words stabbed through me, cruel in their honesty. I reached across the table, grabbing his hand. "You don't have to survive it alone. You'd have me. You'd have us." For the first time, his tears slipped free, rolling down his cheeks. He squeezed my hand so tightly it hurt, like he was trying to memorize the shape of me. "You deserve someone braver," he whispered. "Someone who doesn't hide. Someone who can love you out loud." My throat closed, my chest caving under the weight of his words. "I don't want someone else. I want you." He let out a shaky laugh, broken and bitter. "And I want you. But sometimes love isn't enough to change the world around us." I shook my head, fighting against the truth I didn't want to accept. It should be. It should be enough." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. For a moment, we just breathed each other in, like two men drowning, desperate for one last breath. His hand cupped my face, rough and trembling. "If I were stronger," he said, his voice barely audible, "I'd walk out that door with you right now." I closed my eyes, letting the words shatter me from the inside out. "Then say yes. Just say it and we'll go." The silence that followed was unbearable. When he finally pulled back, the answer was in his eyes, in the devastation written across his face. "I can't," he whispered. My heart broke cleanly, like glass shattering across the floor. We sat in silence, hands still clinging even as everything else fell apart. Finally, he stood, gently pulling his hand from mine. "You should go," he said, his voice hollow. "Before this hurts us both even more." I wanted to fight, to scream, to refuse. But instead I stood too, my body heavy with grief. I walked to the door, each step feeling like it was pulling me farther from the life I had almost had. At the threshold, He was still standing there, tears glistening on his cheeks, his lips parted as if he wanted to call me back but couldn't. "I'll always love you," I said. His chest heaved, but he didn't answer. The silence was his reply. I walked out into the gray evening, the door closing softly behind me. The sound echoed like the end of something sacred. Driving away, the tears finally came, blurring the road until I had to pull over. I sat there, sobbing into the steering wheel, mourning a love that had been real but never allowed to live. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Sometimes the cruelest endings aren't the ones where love dies. They're the ones where love survives, burning bright inside you, but you're forced to live without it. That's the night Ryan chose silence over us. And that's the night I learned that even the deepest love can be broken by fear.